Okay, I'll get started. As far as the project is concerned, again, I was going through all of them, and I've sent some email to a few of you. I'm going to sometimes I try my very best to, well, two things. One is I want you to learn something, be able to use what you learn from the class. Ultimately, I keep bringing it up, regardless of what area you work on. And several of you have been having interviews. What is the single most important criteria that companies look for to hire in our area? Willing to learn, ability to learn. What you know today is not going to be what you need to be doing 3-5 years from now. 3 years ago, how much of MVC do you think I knew? None. I was not using MVC. Microsoft introduced MVC, and then I had to transition from something that was like what we did in 353 was the predominant style. So it is going to evolve. So what we are trying to emphasize is learning to learn, and it's I'm at least twice, maybe 2.5 times as old as you are. I first touched a computer when I was 27 years old. So the thing is, we can either give excuses or we can do things, right? It's okay to make mistakes. Some of you are just not doing it. You're not trying. If you try and fail, I'm fine with it. If you don't try, I've given you sufficient warning. So one thing is I want you to learn. The second is I'm usually very reluctant to fail students in their senior year. This time, I won't hesitate to fail. I've given several of you multiple warnings. You have not responded at all. Okay, so if I won't be guilty. You are responsible for failing yourself. You understand that, I hope. I've sent multiple messages to you. I made myself available on Tuesday. How many of you, I said I'll be there anytime Tuesday evening into night. How many of you said you will meet me? How many? 0. And how many projects are not working here? So all those whose projects were not working should have met me. If you either you know it, you try it, you do it, or if not, meet and ask me. If you don't do either, I am going to fail you. Okay? Whether you have a job. I've given you sufficient notice. I've kept trying to. Some of you are just not responding. You understand that? Okay. And ultimately, you have to take responsibility for learning. I'm not going to keep repeating this again and again. Again, the last time, I'll make myself available next Tuesday, pretty much the entire day, and maybe parts of Wednesday. But next Tuesday, if you're having questions, you clear everything out. I'm going to be available. You make yourself come to one of the rooms that we have and ask questions. Again, before you come, you try to work on it. That's how you learn. But if you don't come, I'm not going to tell you to come and meet me. I'm expecting you to do it. I'm available to address questions. But otherwise, you have to work on it. And again, I'm telling you very, very clearly, this time, I'm not going to hesitate to fail students, and I'll do it with a clear conscience because I've been telling you for months at a time. And there is one project that's not even building. That's totally unacceptable. And the other is several of you are working on projects for nonprofit groups. My conscience won't allow me to do the type of like total neglect that some of you, you're not even bothering to do it. I wish my conscience was something like that. There are days after days when I'm in my office 2, 3 a.m. Why am I doing it? There are things that I want to introduce, bring to. So the issue is, if you don't have a conscience, if you don't commit to doing it, you deserve to fail. Okay, that's the bottom line. You have to commit to it. And this is not. Don't tell me that this is not stuff you're going to be doing. All that is an excuse. Okay, you have to commit to learning. The commitment to learning, regardless of what you are doing, analysis, anything. And again, as I said, if you want to look at an example of somebody who didn't even have access to a computer until 2020, one of the things, if you go to countries like India or Africa, the African countries, a lot of them still don't have access to a lot of things that one takes for granted here. So anyways, I'll stop with this. If you are wanting to meet, if you have questions, I'm going to make myself available, as I said, most of next Tuesday. You have to let me know when you are going to be meeting me, and then I'll try to get the accounting conference room during those hours, and maybe Wednesday, but mostly it will be Tuesday, so you make an effort, because I've given you sufficient chance to keep meeting me, and you have not taken advantage of that. Anyways, there are some groups where there are other groups, so group 1, group 2, group 1, group 3, group 2 has an interesting workflow which you don't seem to know how to get to work. So you need to talk to me about it, because it's right there and you're not able to figure it out. Group 4 has a failing test, but overall it's okay. Group 5 is good with the workflow, with good tests. Group 6 has overall the test is working. The only thing I would like to see is a better workflow to see if there is any other option then. And similarly for group 4 as well, the workflow is not a very smooth workflow. It's just, so if there is something else we can come up with. Group 7, group 7, group 6 has a good workflow. That's what I was trying, got confused between group 6 and 7. So group 6 is Page, Keegan, Brody. So you have a good workflow, but you need to tell me how you're addressing the change from having the award to now potentially having the regional and the state. And then group 7 has a working, that's Nick and Matthew. So you have a working application with the test, but as I said, I would like to see a better workflow. Group 8, I don't know when your last update was. It seemed that you were making progress and then you seem to have stopped. I don't know. Did you update anything after the break?
We have like a, we need to get done.
Okay. Yeah. Then the group 9, I don't see any updates after March 5th.
It's like this now made one. For some reason, it should not be being the foot. And just now I clicked it and it magically worked. I don't know why.
Okay. I'll have to obviously see it. Then group 10 has a workflow. There's no test working there. Do you have a test as yet? Okay. Group 11, there are problems. There is nothing going to the UI with the controller. You have to fix it. Okay. And then group 12, I don't know what is happening to Mackenzie and Matt. So they have not informed me. They didn't show up on Tuesday either. But okay, but there are a lot of missing pieces. There is no control or no view. Okay. Okay, the test, one test was working. Then group 14, as I said, you seem to, the last update was February 28th, and then it stuck there. So there are a lot of, again, missing pieces from there. And group 15, you have a test working. Generally, the application is in good shape. We'd just, again, like to see the workflow to see if there is something that you can keep getting multiple pieces, but we can discuss that. But generally, the groups that are in decent shape are group 4, group 5, group 6, group 7, group 10, though the tests are not working, and then group 15. The others, you need to do a fair amount of work to catch up. And when you're coming to meet me, I want all members of the group to be there. I don't want random 1 or 2 showing up. It's a group project. I want all of you to take ownership and come and discuss. Find a way to come together and discuss. Okay, let me move on to, so one of the functionalities that probably every group needs to use is the registration, which is why I wanted to get that discussed. The other, we need to get some UI, cleaning up of the UI, making it little more smooth in how it functions. As far as the unit test, the CRUD of the 4 functionalities, create, read, update, and delete, we have discussed 3 of them. The one I didn't discuss was the delete. I'm going to either try to squeeze it in sometime towards the end of this class, or I'll just record a small 10-minute segment to discuss it so that you can apply it on your project. But let me discuss one other concept which I will bring in next. I probably won't have time today, but this is something that that I was trying to explore. I thought I was trying to do it first with JavaScript, but actually there's an alternate way of doing it. I'll show you the functionality. This is something that I think many groups have. Okay, the functionality that is with the search options. So we used to have a search view, and then when we did our search, when the user clicked on the search button, we used to go to a different view. So that's really not a very clean way of providing the functionality. So so basically, this is showing the result of the search on the same page. And how do we go about doing it? I will discuss this probably next class. I don't know if I'll have time to discuss it today. But that makes it much better for two reasons. One is, obviously, the result is seen without going to another page. But the other is the user can see what criteria they are selecting. Otherwise, if you're on a different page, different view, it's not obvious what the user has selected. And we will use the concept of a view model, which makes handling this much easier. And that's the same concept we are using in the registration process. So that's one thing that we'll discuss. The other, and today we'll try to finish the registration process and assigning user roles, along with sending an email to the person registering. Okay. So yes, last class, the view models are one of the questions that Nate asked, which I think all of us should have asked. What was your question, Nate, in the last class that you asked?
I was curious if the changes to register view model need to be updated in the migration.
Yeah. So a view model, as Nate pointed out, is a class, right? And so when you make changes to a class, what have we typically been doing? When we are adding a migration and then updating the database. But here, this model is for the purpose of the UI or the view. It's not for the purpose of storing data permanently. The other clauses, which are basically the application clauses, anything that says view in it, view model, is only for the purpose of managing the UI rather than going for the permanent storage. So the answer to your question is we don't have to add a new migration. It's going to be used without any. The only time you start thinking about migration is if you're going to change your database. Okay, so let's go to our, so basically I've set up everything that I need in the view over here. The only thing that I probably should change, I want to do this so that I don't, is the one property that could have a null value is what? The department. Everything else is required. So if department could have a null value, what should I do over here? Put a question mark so that if the user doesn't select a department ID, I need to take a null value for that. So that's the first part, setting up your view model. And after you set up your view model, the second part that we went to was the view itself. So there's the view, and then we have to go to the controller. The view for this, so the account view model, and this is built in. So we are basically modifying a pre-existing view model, a pre-existing view. Okay. So we just took this pre-existing view and said, well, there are some missing pieces in this. In the registration process, we wanted to add first name, last name, phone, and we also wanted the user to be able to provide a user role, whatever role. In this case, we have 2 roles. In some of your other applications, you have more than that. And we were also discussing, actually, Microsoft, I don't know which version of .NET Core they introduced this, but this makes it much easier to add in the hard-coded values if you want to bring that in over here. And I've given the, so choose user role. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to discuss, and I'll discuss a little later, is how do you, so the department, it's optional. When is it optional? It's a coordinator. So one of the better UI options would be, so if the user chose coordinator, to not show this at all, right? So one of the things we'll explore is JavaScript and jQuery for doing that, where we will, based upon the user selection here, if the user selects coordinator, this won't show. Well, initially nothing will show if the user selects department chair. Only then we will show this group over here. Okay. The other piece that I wanted to discuss here, we have the value set up. Okay, so I wanted to, instead of using 0 for optional choice, I just changed it to a nullable ID. So what could I set here? Okay, I could set it to null. Okay, so everything else I will leave as is. This is what we did last class. And then from here, so I've addressed the view model, I've addressed the view. What's the piece I need to address next? The controller method. So the controller is account controller. Again, this was one of the pre-existing controllers that was there. And within that, we are looking at register. And there are 2 versions of register. And again, we discussed briefly why there are 2 versions. Why do we have 2 versions of register? Okay, so what is in among this, if you're looking at it as a CRUD operation, which of the CRUD operations is register? It's an add. So anytime there's an add, the user has to have a form to provide input, and then so that's the get method, right? So it's the HTTP get, and then whatever the user provides as input is taken into the post and then processed on the server. So that's why you have those 2. Okay. So one of the things that for now, I'm trying to think of all route department ID. Where is this? Cannot convert. Okay, so this is a nullable integer, and I'm just going to. Convert from to int. Okay, so this is
The one that I thought I asked you last time, and you showed me the solution for a problem I had, but that's what we did. But you don't need the problem.
which one?
You don't need you don't need this one.
This one over here.
Yeah. It's just a problem we're having, and you showed me how to solve it.
Well, but this the department ID in the model. What is the model referring to? It's the register view model. So, so that we are saying is nullable integer. And where are we sending it to? We are sending it to the department share constructor. So department share, let's see what it takes. So department shares department ID is not it's not a nullable integer. So basically it is saying that that department ID cannot be a null value. It has to be an integer if it is coming into. So okay, so let's see how to resolve that.
Just go to the normal controller and choose one key sticker.
So each department share, we are saying when they're created, should have a foreign key of department ID. So so we cannot make this. So when we are getting this, it cannot be an optional value. It's not. So it cannot be a null value. It has to be a 0 then. So it has to be an integer value. So this has to be set it to integer. So what do we send from the view then? If the user doesn't select any value, then we have to send a 0. Yes.
Did you use this statement in the register read model, or not the register read model?
In the controller.
In the controller, when you're making the department ID, up top where you have the column of that, can you make that? Can you put if model dot department ID not equal to null, then you can do this.
Well, the issue is we don't really need it here. We only need the model is referring to the register view model, and anything. So basically, all of the properties inside the register view model is accessible through the model. Okay, so that's so basically this constructor is saying the department share. It's saying I need all of these values, including the foreign key value of whichever department he or she is the chair of. Otherwise, it's sort of, we cannot be a chair without being a chair of a particular department. Okay, so that's why, even though it's optional, if the user doesn't select something, we have to send in a value that's not a department ID value. So that's why we'll send in a 0 if the user doesn't select. Okay, so let's go in here. This is what I had asked you to do. Construct, so you're checking to see if it's department chair in the user role. If it's department chair, we are creating a department chair object for the user. If not, since we only have 2 roles, we are creating an application user. So the coordinator is not a subclass. So we create the application user. And after the application user is created, okay, so this was the pre-existing, like how it was creating the application user. I commented it out. We are not going to use it. And then we are going to, what are we doing here? It's pre-existing code. What's being done here? It's actually creating the user, right? We did this in DB initialize earlier. It's a create method. It's the async question of the create method. So what's it taking? It's taking the user that we just created, which could be either the user object could either be a department chair or an application user object. And remember when we created it on DB initialize, if you go back to DB initialize, okay, right here, we used the same method on user manager. Create async each coordinator, and then we each chair, and then we added the role. So here we are basically this. I think the async method has 2. There are 2 create async methods. One which takes just the user object, the other which takes the user and the password. So this takes these 2 parameters, and we create the object, or we try to create it. And since it's an async method, we use a wait, right, to wait until it finishes, and then we capture it into the result. This tells us whether the result succeeded or not. And if it succeeded, it goes into a set of, this is the code for basically emailing, sending the email to the, this is to have the user click on the link to validate the email and not have like a spam account set up. And then these 2 lines here come and log the user in. So the issue is if you want the user to, as soon as they get created, to come and log back in, then you would basically sign them in this asynchronous mode. Now, there are a couple of things that we need to do in addition, which we will explore now. But if you want to send the email out, there is like a template that you need to use for the email, and I posted some like a block of code on eCampus. So the place where you need to put that segment of code is under services. If you go under the services folder, there are 2, well, one is a class, the other is an interface. Email sender is the interface, and you know what an interface does, right? It basically is setting up like a signature that needs to be implemented. An email sender implements it. So this email sender, so we can fill it out with with anything. So this is the segment of code that we need to bring in. So let me just remove this. What you would be currently seeing is just this. I thought I removed it, but I guess I didn't. So what you would be seeing is just, if I remove this part, you'll be seeing this signature right here, okay? And there will be one line of code which says, what does it say? Return task.completed. Okay, so this basically is there to indicate that, well, so that you don't get an error message. Pardon? It's not async here? Okay, it's just task. Okay. So what I want you to do is to go to eCampus and under class projects, I've created this text file called email sender class. So if you open that, it contains this is the template for sending email. So you'll have to copy it. It basically has like the from, to, address, the subject, and so on. So I didn't want to go through that entire template. So if you can, at the very end, I've commented out, this is what you currently have. So you can leave out the commented section. Well, if you copy the entire thing, you'll obviously have to delete or so this, whatever we have here, has to be commented out, is what I indicated. So this is to be commented out or removed. So this part, you can either comment out or remove. I'll just remove it. Okay. Now, there are things to change here. This uses the Gmail gateway, the SMTP server. So you need to use, hopefully most of you have Gmail accounts. So you'll have to use that just to send this email. Now, the other pieces that you need to add, there are going to be some errors showing up. This uses an open source library called MailKit. So you need to go into your dependencies here. Go to right-click on NuGet. Well, I guess if you right-click maybe on dependencies rather than NuGet. So right-click on dependencies, and it will allow you to select Manage NuGet Packages, and then browse for Mail, M-A-I-L, kit. Okay, it's an open source package. So it's whatever the latest version. I've already installed it, so you'll have to install that. And once you install it, it will show up as MailKit. This is the version 2.1.3. And so that's what's being referenced in the code. So you'll have to set some using statements. There is a .NET library for mail, but it seems this MailKit, from whatever I've been exploring, this seems to be more popular. So we won't use system.net.mail. If by chance you already have it, just comment it out. Instead, we will use this using mailkit.net.smtp. Okay. once you have that, you shouldn't be seeing any errors here, anything with not being recognized. Does anyone have anything not recognized in this segment of code? Well, right-click on dependencies, and then select Manage NuGet Packages, and it will open up the window. And once you're in the window, this is obviously not installed, so you have, well, initially it's not, so you have to go to Browse and search for MailKit. And obviously after it gets installed, I have it here. Okay, once you've installed it, you can reference it, mailkit.net.smtp, and if you build your application at this point, it should build a solution. How many of you have that working here? Okay. Okay, so once that is working, then you have to go in and make, I basically set up a test account. Test dot. Okay, so this is, I'm just going to call it my last name. So this will be in the title of the email that is sent out. The to address is whatever the user has entered as their username is the same as the email, so that's where it will go. So use a real email for you to check it. We can also prevent the user from logging in if they don't validate it by checking or clicking on the link. Yes. Pardon?
Address title.
Yeah. Well, I misspelled it. Okay. So there is, well, it's a variable name, so there is this, so whenever you make a change in a variable name, make sure that it gets changed everywhere. So there is this option of renaming it. Okay. So it's being used in this method here from to then the subject, and all of these parameters are being sent in here when this method is being called. The email, the subject, and the message, and let's see if there is any other place. Okay, over here, you need to again use your Gmail. Let's test. Let's test. And this is your Gmail password. Okay, so this sets up sending the email to whichever email has been used to log in or to set up the account. Okay, so let me go back to the account controller, and in the account controller, well, can you see where that method is getting called? Okay, so this method is email sender, right, which has this send email async. And if you go to your account controller, what are we doing? Right here, we are sending this. Okay, so this method can be called from any place in your application. If you want to send some form of some email for any purpose, you can do it. You can also, I guess, this generates an email. Of course, because you use your, trying to think if you can do this anonymously to spam people. I don't know, maybe you can do it. But anyway, so this should, when you run this, so this is the post, and the register is where we have the drop-down list for departments. That's why we are having this view data. This is basically to keep track of where it has to return, though we are not really tracking that. So let's run this application and see if the user is getting created. We'll first create the coordinator, because for the department chair, if we create a department chair, there is one missing piece. What's the missing piece that we need to include if we create a department chair? So the department is a two-way association, right? So we have the department chair being assigned as the chair of a department, but the department has to know who is its chair. So we need to add that piece in. How did we do it on DB initialize? Do you remember what we did? Right here we did an update, right? So I thought we put a series of loops in there. Didn't we use a nested loop for that? I thought we used nested loops. No? Yeah, 2 for each, I thought we did. Anyways, I'll leave it as it is for now, but I thought I used anyways, let me get back to actually doing this. Maybe we will finish. Let's see, where is my so do you follow what we have done up to now? The part of why I go over it is whatever I'm requiring you to do on your project, on your group project, how much of it have we not discussed in class? We have essentially discussed everything that I'm requiring you to do. So if you understood your individual project, you should be able to work on your group project. So the one piece that we need to add, let's go ahead and add it so that we can use both the coordinator as well as the department chair. So at what point would we update the department? After the department chair was created, we are assigning to the, well, this is create, where is the role being assigned? Do we assign a role? Is there any place where we are assigning? We are not assigning, right? So how do we go about assigning a role? So if results exceeded, what does this say? That means that the user was created. So I'll comment this, assign user to role. So how do we assign a user to role? Again, I'll go to DB initialize. What did we do over here? We said add to role async. So let's go back. So we have to give the user and the role. Okay, add to role async. Okay, so I'll say so the user manager is underscore user manager over here. add to role async. Is it add to user async? Add to role async. We have to first give the user, and we call the user, and where do we get the role? This register view model has a property called, okay, so it's model dot user role that gives us whatever user role the user has selected. Okay, and what else is it asking for? What's it suggesting? A wait. Why does it suggest a wait? Yeah, it's an async method, so we have to await it for getting created. And once we have this, what's the next piece that we want? So if it is department share, what do we need to do? Okay, so we want to assign share to department. So how do we do that? We first need to know which department we need to update, right? So we need to get the department object. How do I get that department object? From the, can I use the user manager to get the department? I have to get it from the, it's already existing. Remember, the view model doesn't have the entire department object. The department object is already on the database. So we need to go pull that particular object, right? That's exactly what we did in DB initialize. What did we do over here? We went in, got the list of departments, and then we updated. So using this statement. Okay. So which means we have to again go to the database to get this. And is the database accessible to us? Did we get the database created? And we have a database called underscore database, right? Remember, we created this, and where do we get the connection to the database? It's through this constructor, right? So this is, remember, the injection, the dependency injection, so that we can get it into each of our, any controller. So let me go down to where we need it. So what is the purpose of this, wanting to use this now? Let me get to my let's register. Okay, what am I trying to do with the database? Okay, so I want go to departments, and then I want to find, and what department do I want to find? Model dot department ID. Okay, but this is only if the user that is created is a department share. Otherwise, I'll be getting 0 here, right? So what should I do? Put an if statement. So if what? The same if condition here. If the user role is department share, only then do I want to go through this process of getting the department object, and then what do I do with the department object? What did we do in... We need to update this particular object, right? What are we updating in this particular object? And what is this ID? Is it in the model? It is going. When is this? It's created in the database. So where will we get it? Somebody other than Abdul Rahman. See, I want you to visualize what's happening. So it's not in this. It's not in this model here, right? We are not getting it when from this register view model. That doesn't have the department chair ID. It's basically the user ID. And when is that user ID generated? When we create the user. So it was not something that was there. It's not coming through the user's form. It is from the database. So how do you think I can get access to this ID? Who does it belong to? It belongs to this user object, right? So what do? User dot the ID that the user now has, this particular user object, is the ID that we want to use. And so we have now updated this object, but does it get updated on the database? The answer is no. What do we need to do to update on the database? It's a two-step process. Database, well, it's database dot departments dot update, and we'll update this particular department object. And so this is now updated it, but to save the changes, we have to say, okay, so this entire part is to send the user ID to the department. Do you understand what this is doing? Again, I keep mentioning visualize the class diagram to see what process is involved in having this work. Okay, so this pretty much covers the entire process. So let's build it now. So it should cover both the roles. So let's build it, run it, and try to create. So I'll go into start without debugging once it builds. Okay, do you understand? Any questions on this? Yeah. What's that? Under the register is a view that you should be seeing under. It's not under view model. It should be under. You mean in the control? It's in the account controller. Well, that is the view. So you have to go under account and then look for register. That's the view CS HTML. Okay, that's something we discussed last class. Okay. So the issue is now once this is created and built, so all the three pieces, the view model, the view, and then the controller methods. So if now we go and run it, okay, so I'll go into register and let me use my mix, I guess. Mix.wvu.edu. I think I have to use some combination. I think it's upper and lowercase. I forget what the requirement. You can change this. Okay. I use the. Okay, let's see. I'll go with coordinator. Okay, so it's logged me in here, and then I need to check my email to see if I. Okay, so I've received the email. Okay, please confirm your account by clicking on this link. Okay, so this should, and you could set up so that if they don't come and validate, you can prevent them from logging in. Now, what made this? So let's say for this application, the users cannot self-create their account, so there'll be like a master admin who is creating it. So if somebody who's an admin is creating the accounts, what shouldn't be happening? Pardon? The email should be sent to whoever, if they created, let's say they created it for 3 of the advisors and 5 of the department chairs. But each time you create a user, you don't want to come back and sign that user in, right? So the sign in takes place over here, right? This line here. So if you don't want it to come back, you can comment out these 2 lines of code, in which case it won't log in. So this will allow the user to create a few, whatever. In this case, it's 5 or 6 accounts. The other option would be if they are to self-create, you'll have to set up like a validation through somebody else, allocating them, validating, saying that they are a user. How many of you have this working with the email getting sent? Okay. Only 2 of you?
I have like trouble accessing my Google account with the email. Like it's like blocked.
It's blocking it.
Yeah, like I got an email saying there's like a security.
Oh, okay, you're getting it through some other account. Okay. Yeah.
Or with the edge spaces that we can get at last
Yeah.
what goes into the
Okay, let's see. So we are checking to see if it's department share. Yeah. 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 Okay, so one thing that you need for, if you want to populate it is, the first time it gets populated from register, right? This is the HTTP GET. The second time when it goes through there to that page, then if you so if I log out, why is this not working? Okay. So if I get back to that page, it actually there is no where is the drop down coming from? It uses this view data, right? So if you want the view data to show up again when you go back, what should you do? You have to have this view data in over here as well. Do you have this view data in this register here? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So if you are just going back to that page, if you want the drop down to show up again, I don't know if that happens. Are we going back to that? If you want the drop down to show up here as well, from this going from this post, you have to set up the view data again over here. So from the other thing I just want to quickly address is using JavaScript. So Brody said that it was email validation. Is there any other reason for it not going through after you?
Oh, no, it was just like, it was a Google security thing saying it was a suspicious app, so it prevented it from accessing my account.
Okay. So then it's working then? Okay. So is it working for most of you? Yeah.
Mine has probably giving me sending email confirmation.
This one here?
Yeah, it caused the exception. Yeah. Actually sending it caused exception. Like when the block that we just talked about on campus.
Yeah.
It's stronger.
So for that, do you have all your authentication and so the basic changes we made was to make sure that you had this Google authentication. This is the only thing that has to be absolutely correct. I think the others, it should be. I can't think of any reason for. Okay. So how many of you have this working now? Can you raise your hand? So one is an exception. I don't see what else. Yeah, it's working. So I catch an exception. I'm trying to see why it would catch an exception.
Mine was just I misspoke with my account. So I got that error, but when I went back to create it again, it says that username is different.
Yeah, the username is now in the database. So you'll have to go to the database. So if you did this, select all. So basically this particular username has been, so you'll have to delete it or use some other email.
Okay.
Okay, I have about 5 minutes remaining. I wanted to show you some of the JavaScript to, let's see, this is a piece of script that depends on the jQuery library. So this is used. Where do you think JavaScript and jQuery is used on? Which of the 3 layers? It's on the view. So go to register.cshtml, and at the very bottom there is a section for scripts. So this is where we want to add it in. And by the way, so if you have a master administrator who is doing the creation of accounts, so how do they start doing it? So you'll have to create a master account with that username, password, and then if you go into this shared, if you see in the layout, the account doesn't show up. So creating of the account is actually in this where it says login partial. So there's another CSHTML for login partial, and if you go into that, you'll see that there is this is where you have the register option. So if you don't want some random person to be able to register themselves, what would you do? Yeah, put an if statement with authenticate and roll on it. Okay, so that's what you should do on your project if you want to set it accessible only to an administrator. Okay, let's see if I can just get this started. Register.cshtml. Okay. Only have a couple of minutes left, so I don't know if I can. What we are going to, I'll just introduce you at least to, we are going to reference the jQuery library. So the way you get access to that library, it's the source is at you use these script tags. So I'll open the script tag, and then I will say the source of the script for jQuery is actually at a website. So it's http code.jQuery.com, and so this is where the latest version of the jQuery library resides. So it's code.jQuery.com, and then jQuery dash or hyphen the latest version, and they have I think they call it minification, which is to make it as small as possible. .js for JavaScript. Oops. JS. Okay, so this is the source file, and it's within quotes, okay, double quotes here. And once I have that set up, I need to specify what's the type of the script, and the type of the script is JavaScript. So I'm going to select this, and then I need to close the tag. Okay. So we are going to use this jQuery, and below that we will use the JavaScript, the method that we are going to use, and for that again we'll set up an open close. So basically we will say another script here, and this time again the type is JavaScript, and we'll close this, and we'll set up our JavaScript method inside over here. I'm going to stop now because we've run out of time, but what this JavaScript method is going to do is it's going to look at what user role was selected, whether it's department chair or coordinator. And based on that user selection, it will either show this particular div item, or it won't. So as I said, I'll introduce you to that, and then there's a JavaScript, and jQuery is quite extensive, and so we'll explore a little bit, as I said, but if you want to explore more, there are a fair amount of resources online. Okay, what I would like for you to do is to apply creating accounts with roles on your project. Okay. That's how you know whether you can do it or not, and I believe every one of your projects requires that. So do that, and if you have questions, as I said, make a list of them, and I'll be available Tuesday to meet.
Do you have any idea why we're checking this account right here? Because it says it's setting this, and when it goes over to account controller, and then it says it's setting this. I changed all the stuff in email sending too.
So the one thing that I would do is to just put the breakpoints to see what's happening. Did Jonathan's work?
Yeah, his was working on it.
Okay. The only other thing is whether anything here is breaking. I could see some error above here, maybe again, but you said it's not breaking until, but
until I hit register.
Okay, so the question is, was there a user created?
Yeah, they created the user account database.
Okay.
But it didn't say.
Okay, so okay, then just put breakpoint and see what's happening. And you'll have to obviously use it right here. You'll have to go in and delete that.
The user account created, right?
Maria.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she's giving this to you. There's a little note in there too. I haven't read it or looked at it or anything.
Well,
Yeah, that's from Maria.
how is the
Neighbors didn't really win at all, but it was fun. It wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. It was kind of fun. So.